Okay, I'm Rick Sebak, and I've been making programs here at WQED for 25 years now. And often people will say to me, wow, you must have some incredible pieces of these programs that never made the finished show. Funny outtakes and things like that. And I always say, nah, we like to put the goofy stuff in the shows. We like to keep people surprised all the time. But I will admit, sometimes there's too much material. We only get an hour or a half hour, depending on the show, and sometimes there are leftovers. For most of the 21st century, we've been putting some of those extras on our DVDs as an extra. And those extras never air. But we were looking at some recently, and I thought, these deserve to be broadcast, or at least put online so people can see them. That's what we're going to do in this episode of It's Pittsburgh and a lot of other stuff. We're going to look at some rare stories that you may have seen if you've watched the DVDs, but we hope that they'll be fresh and interesting nonetheless. We're going to take a look at some lost pieces of Right Beside the River, of underground Pittsburgh, and pieces of what makes Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh. We'll take a look at a full, complete story or two. We'll tell some behind-the-scenes tales. And we'll take advantage of some juicy sound bites that we couldn't squeeze into the finished programs for one reason or another.
It's Pittsburgh and a lot of other stuff is made possible by the BUHL Foundation, serving southwestern Pennsylvania since 1927, and by PNC, celebrating Pittsburgh's past, present, and future at the PNC Legacy Project exhibit in downtown Pittsburgh.
So, our first extra is from the program called Right Beside the River. We have so many rivers around here. It wasn't hard to find great stories along the banks of the three biggies, as well as smaller ones like the Kiskiminitis and the Youghiogheny. The only reason this story didn't make the final program was we were crunched for time. And we thought we'd find other ways, like this, to share this surprising, unexpected story. Here we go. On the right bank of the Allegheny River, across from and just south of Ford City in Armstrong County, there's an interesting little town called Cadogan.
Cadogan started as a coal mining town. Most of the houses here were company owned. It employed thousands of people during its heyday. A lot of coal was taken from this area. And then there's a few businesses here, the Villa Restaurant, and there's a local pub, and of course, big blue building, which my factory occupies, which I've built several additions on. That's where my chip factory is, but you can't miss it. It's a big blue building right in the middle of town.
Inside the building, Nic DiSio makes corn tortilla chips on machines that he engineered and assembled to produce his thin and crispy products.
Started when I was 24. I learned the process from a guy from Puebla, Mexico. That's where I learned how to do the nixtamal, which is the cooking of the corn with the lime and stone grinding it. But that was kind of my mission, was to provide the area with more authentic foods. I consider myself a Mexican food company, even though we manufacture tortilla chips here. I'm not a snack food company. We use 4 different types of corn here. We use the white corn, the yellow corn, the red corn, and the blue corn. We put it in huge 1,000-pound tanks. We add water to that, and then we add a food-grade lime. What that does is that cracks the hull of the corn and aids in the absorption of water into the kernel. We cook that until it's ready. That it has to be very precisely done. It's more of an art form rather than a science. It's something that, it's like winemaking. You really have to do it over and over and over again to get it right, and there's no strict standards of either pH or time or temperature. You kind of have to feel it, and every corn crop's a little different, and you have to make adjustments accordingly. After the steeping process is complete, we wash it, and then we put it into a corn grinder, which is called a molino. It grinds it into a masa. At that point, it's a dough. We put it in a mixer to get everything uniform. And we take it in dough balls into the sheeter head. And we have special cutters on the sheeter head, which can form it. You can use the same equipment for tortilla making, for the round tortilla, but I have a special cutter that does the triangular shape. And it goes through 3 levels of baking, and then it goes onto a cooling conveyor. The cooling conveyor equilibrates it, gets the moisture that during the baking process, which is dispersed through the chip unevenly, it evens it out. So it goes on this, in this cooling process, then it goes into a conveyorized fryer. And we use a soybean oil, non-hydrogenated. And what it does during the frying process, it displaces whatever water is left in that tortilla. It's slightly dusted with a flour salt. And it goes up an elevator into the packaging equipment, which weighs it, code dates it, and then it's packaged. My main package was just a clear bag, and we put a sticker label on. My main retail label was the Mexico tortilla chip. Of course, you can see the blue chip here. Also a chip that I did years ago. It was, of course, a Steeler chip, black and gold. And this is another one I do now for myself, which is the black and gold. Just the plain package is what goes to the restaurants. And they use, of course, the blue, the red, the yellow, and the white chip. We try to get the chips into my store and move them as quick as possible. The chip is best, you know, every day that goes by, even though we have a 3-month shelf life, you don't want them sitting around for a month or 2 months. The best place to get them now is to come to my store in the Strip District. That's where, you know, I sell most of the retail.
And that's where you can get a variety of Nic's other Mexican foods like corn and flour tortillas made on the premises. He calls all of this Reyna Foods.
Reyna is my mother's maiden name. That's where Reyna came from. I named the business in honor of her. You know, she taught me a lot about how the different foods from Mexico. Even though my paternal side is Italian, my mother's side was Mexican. So, you know, people, sometimes they think because it's made in their backyard, they can go across the country and get something better. That's not the case. I've been all through the country, and I'm very into tortilla chips, and I taste them everywhere I go. And I've won awards with my chip, even in New Mexico. And people don't realize that probably one of the best tortilla chips in the country are right here in Cadogan. Because I pretty much put my life into this chip. But probably one of the best tortilla chips in the country comes out of Cadogan, PA.
You know, I think we don't expect to find great Mexican products from Armstrong County, but the truth is amazing. And you can still get those chips at Reyna Foods in the Strip, where Nic DiSio has since put together a restaurant called Casa Reyna, featuring authentic Mexican dishes, worth checking out. But just as you don't expect to find Mexico on the Allegheny, it's still fun to find California on the Mon. This next clip is also from right beside the river. It's a version of our story about an old movie. You get this incredible view of what's sometimes called the Greenfield Bend in the Monongahela River from the deck of a restaurant called High Point on Route 88, about 30 miles south of Pittsburgh. The bend is famous among river pilots because of the skill it takes to get barges around the Horseshoe Bend. If you look to the right, you'll see the stately little town of California, Pennsylvania. On a recent trip, we stopped on the campus of the California University of Pennsylvania and met Charles Keller, a lawyer who grew up here and graduated from here.
In 1924, when I was 1 year old, my father came to California as the chairman of the English department. And so we moved to California, and I lived for the next 84 years within 2 blocks of the college here.
We also talked with Bob O'Neill and Edgar Harris at the old Gallagher family house, where the California Area Historical Society has its offices and research collections.
Yeah, I was born right here, well, up on the hill. It was East Pike then, before they merged.
I just came here in my junior year of high school. But I remember, you know, walking through the town and knowing the stores and so forth, but I wasn't actually born and raised here. I was down the river a little further.
At the Gallagher house, we also met and talked with Pat Cowan, who in 2009 was president of the Historical Society. She and Edgar Harris actually started this organization.
We love it because we think this is a very interesting thing to do. And we want to keep the town alive. We want to remember everything that ever happened here in California.
In 1938, there was a silent movie made here about this town of California. It starts with a train coming into town. and then students are getting off to go to the college. Our impromptu group of local historians all were familiar with this great old movie.
Oh, it's heavenly. Every so often we do come across something that is really, we feel like is so valuable, and that is one of the things, definitely one of the things.
The little short guy that got off the train was the band director up at the high school, Doc Corno, and I recognized him.
Near the start, there's a shot of an old paddle wheel riverboat, too.
That's all we had then was the paddle wheel boats. And my father-in-law was a captain on one of those boats. And my brother-in-law was a captain on one of those boats. And my other brother-in-law was a deckhand.
The movie shows all of the businesses downtown. Those are the streets that I roamed as a kid growing up, and I was familiar with all of those stores.
I think it makes a difference to be born and raised in the small towns. I mean, we know everyone, we're close, we all went to school together. I remember some of the businesses in California and the owners standing in front of them.
Yes, you went to the 5 and 10. You either went to the 5 and 10 or you went to the company store. Well, the company store, that's where the miners got all their things there. You could get everything there because they didn't get money, they got script. But Murphy's is still nice, you know, that building is still wonderful.
Butcher shops, just everyone shopped in town, you know, everything was local, and now you go to the shopping malls now.
We had 3 pharmacies, we had 3 hardware stores, we had 3 good women's shops, 2 good men's shops. It was, gas stations were 1 or 2 pumpers in the old days. But it was a personal aspect, you know, they pumped the gas for you. They cleaned your windshield, and they were your neighbors and your friends. And that's where you picked up the local gossip. The gas stations, like the other stores and establishments in the community, were an integral part of the life of the community. You know, you stop and get some gas, and then you go in and buy a piece of clothing, and then you stop at one of the corner grocery stores and the neighboring pharmacy, and then you're ready to go home.
No one had cars. I mean, some people had cars, but you stayed in your own town. If you were from California, you lived in California, you stayed in California, played your games here, and went to school here.
I can't remember who did the movie, but I remember when it was done, because one of the scenes in the movie shows youngsters coming out of one of the schools, and I saw my own picture. I wasn't very distinguished, so you have to look carefully to pick it out, but I was able to see my classmates and my friends. Because we're a small town, you knew everybody, even those who were in the classes ahead of you and behind you.
We had, from our class, we had quite a few people that did real well.
Our school system was excellent, and that was in large part due to the influence of the college, which trained teachers. We had student teachers in every classroom.
Near the end of the film, there are some shots at the local firehouse. Apparently, at least a couple of the firemen were involved in the making of this film.
California has been especially fortunate. The Southwestern Pennsylvania Fire School was run here at the college for many, many, many years. And we had as good a fire department as you could have.
The fire department, two of the firemen that I knew were involved in taking the pictures. I don't know who else was involved, but I know those 2 were involved, Harold Gregory and Dave McFadden. They just went around and anything that was interesting, I guess, they took pictures of. They get these housewives out washing clothes, and they got tear in their clothes. They're not too happy about it, but they took it anyway.
They're always laughing and smiling, and the dog comes up and they play with it, and they go out and pet the cow, and you know, it's just like, it's wonderful, isn't it?
It was the nature of the community. California has always been a very friendly town.
The very last shots in the film are from the train again, this time leaving California. Old movies have that incredible power to put us back in the past. California, Pennsylvania is really lucky to have such a treasure from 1938. pre-World War II. But you know, we're lucky too. We get to go to these unusual places and find things like this and talk to amazing people. And sometimes we end up with extra bits like this that we want to share with you, especially if you've never played around with the DVDs. These next clips aren't full stories. Those are in the finished program. But these are some quality bits from underground Pittsburgh. Obviously, one of the most unusual locations that we visited in this program, that had so many unusual locations, was the machine shop in the basement of Marshall Elevator. All the old belts and pulleys operating off the one main shaft. You may have noticed at one point, we showed Bill and Dave doing a little leather repair on one of the belts. That wasn't planned.
The lacing that we hold the belts together, that's what usually goes. The belts themselves usually are okay.
The lacing gets dry rotted.
I tell Dave, you got to be nice to the machines. You know, they'll be nice to you.
And come ahead.
Okay, but sometimes you can't count on anything to go right. For the other Marshall Elevator basement, we shot Rob Jamison going downstairs to show us the historical papers. The basement light bulb with an old pull chain switch just didn't want to cooperate.
Let's start from scratch.
So our cameraman Bob kept asking Rob to do it again.
Shoot.
And again. And again. And again and again.
From the top.
And it seemed to take forever. And just when it all seems right, you shouldn't relax. Rob was not having a great time at all this, but he did get his exercise that day.
Oh, baby.
On the day that we went to the Iron Mountain storage facility, much of the day was spent on golf carts that allowed us to get around the huge facility. We interviewed Tom Benjamin as he drove.
This was formerly a limestone mine, so there's not been any mining taking place here for about the last 60 years. So the mine was active from 1902 to the early 1950s. And the limestone was removed and transported to Pittsburgh by U.S. Steel. And limestone is one of the key components used to make steel.
And we didn't include any of the information that Nick Salambini told us about the mine's history as a bomb and fallout shelter.
Well, what I have here are some of the initial photographs of what the facility looked like back in the 1950s. And this was one of the lounge areas where the executives from the different companies would come up and sit and lounge as they were preparing to wait out the nuclear holocaust.
Nowadays, operations here are about state-of-the-art storage. And getting a tour of the Corbis vault with Ann Hartman was impressive. She had so much stuff to show us, we were able to use only part of what we shot. And we didn't include even the part where we asked about local stuff.
Well, let's see what we can find from Pittsburgh. We have box A here that has cities, and Pittsburgh is in here. We would have images from dating back in Pittsburgh, certainly. This one is from 1946, the old Gimbel's department store and certainly the old automobiles. It would also contain line drawings. This is an engraving, Fruit Market in Pittsburgh, dated 1876. Old image of the city.
There must be days when you just want to look through stuff.
It's tempting every day to look through images, but we're pretty busy here. We have a small staff, and we have a turnaround time, especially for magazine sales, to get it to the client within 4 hours. So we're rushing a bit at times.
Well, among the mountains of other material that we shot for this program, there's tons of stuff about coal mining. At the Rush's house, we saw lots of items.
How about we get a ribbon? These are UMWA ribbons, and this particular one is from Benwood, West Virginia. In the 20s and 30s, 40s, into the 50s, almost into the 60s, the UMWA on April 1st, which is Mitchell Day, had huge parades throughout the country, and you were expected to wear these ribbons in the parades and things. And early on in the 20s and 30s, if a coal miner where you worked passed away or was killed in a mining accident or stuff, you went to the funeral and you wore the ribbon in this fashion in memoriam. And early years, if you didn't attend the funeral, the union actually would fine its members for not participating.
There are segments like that for many of our programs that get cut because the program is running long. And often there are good sound bites that get pulled because another one says the same thing a little differently, or maybe it makes the flow of the story better. These next clips are full of good sound bites. But often they don't tell the whole story. If you want the whole stories, you're going to have to get a copy of the program called What Makes Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh.
The OSHA Corner is a good example of a story where we had way too many good statements from all the people who had come to talk about Alex Bodnar and his restaurant.
I go to New York every now and then for business, and one of the things I'm always looking for is that little hole in the wall in Little Italy that you just don't know about, but it's going to have the most phenomenal food, and only the locals know, and if you go in there, you got to be careful, right? But the food is just outstanding, and so, you know, authentic is an overused word, but that's what this place is about.
And it's growing. I have a lot of beautiful people that have shadowed my steps and became part of the Hungarian community and family. Joshka Bácsi, come on in.
Hey, what's going
Come on in.
There are no snobs come into this place, I'll tell you that.
Both of my grandfathers were from Hungary, and they came to the United States for work, for a better life. And they found Hungarian women and married them, you know. So, you know, I'm a hunky.
I love the food, you know, here. In fact, when I worked at Pitt, I used to bring secretaries down at lunchtime just to get 2 crepes Suzette because they love it, you know. And we were sitting here as he made it, and a girl said, "Oh, I love this stuff." You know, he makes everything a cappella, you know. As you come in, you ask for it, he do it.
You know, I mean, I'm proud to be in the city of Pittsburgh, you know, and in spite of its pollution from the previous days, when I came here in '57, this town, you could cut the smoke, you know, and but we all survived, and now we have a beautiful city that has a good location. There's a lot of good enterprising possibilities here, and this is what I'm looking forward to, and this is what I like to see cultivated here. You know?
I guess it's obvious we can't include everything, and to come in close to a standard length, we sometimes have to lose whole chunks of a story. In our segment about the Wemco Club, we had to cut everybody talking about the bartender, Eunice Young, or Uni.
Uni, that's our head barmaid there. She's been here 8 years, volunteer. She likes to come, you know.
Uni, she is great. She has a personality, and I think 3/4 of the people that come in here because she's here.
She's one of our volunteers, and everyone loves her, so they come in every day just to see her.
I made a mistake when I hired her, but I apologize to the club.
Say, when I am, then, right?
She's nice. She's really nice, yeah.
She keeps us all in line. You know, get a little bit out of hand. She's right there to straighten things out.
She comes down here, and we all jive her and tell her how pretty she is, you know.
Uni calls me smooth, but you'll have to ask Uni that. No.
I know she told. I'm not even gonna go there with her. It's good, Joe. It's good. It's good. She's teaching me how to be smoother, but I call her smooth.
Well, we also shot lots of stuff about Steeler fans, and we couldn't even include all the news about the Everett family and their famous "You're in Steeler Country" banner.
I tell people about it, and like 95% of the people I tell don't believe me. They say, "Yeah, right, yeah, exactly." I'm like, "That ain't your sign," they'll say, and then they'll come down to a game and they'll actually see me do it, and they'll be like, "Oh, you know what? You were right. You weren't, you know." I'm like, "Oh, you weren't lying to us. You weren't lying." So
I remember a few years ago when I met my wife, and she first brought up to me that, you know, my soon-to-be father-in-law had this sign and all this, and I'm like, "Nah, you're lying. You're lying." She's like, "I'm telling you, it's the truth." I'm like, "No, you're not. You're lying to me." You know, so finally we went over to the house one day and she took me and she showed me the sign. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa.
We shot this January 1st, 2006, and Harry Everett surprised us with an announcement.
Well, today is my last game. I'm retiring. Last time I'm going to put up the sign and take it down, and from now on, it's their sign.
It's something that I've done for years now, so it shouldn't be a hard thing for me to do, but I always remember him for this, and I always remember my grandfather that painted it, you know, like years ago, so, you know, just a very proud moment, that's all.
Actually, Brad told us that the sign has been kept under his bed for years.
I usually try to keep it in a safe place because I don't want any Browns or Ravens fans trying to sneak into the house and take it from us or anything. So.
We actually talked to just about everybody we interviewed in this program about the Steelers, because we were shooting when everybody, even staid and stuffy bankers, was crazy about the team. And so we thought we'd end this extra with some more of these crazy people that all help make Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh.
The football team is immensely important to Pittsburgh and its culture, and it has been for, actually it has been since Rooney bought the team back in the 30s.
I've always been a Steeler fan, as far back as I can remember.
We got a good team, I guess. The Steelers is what Pittsburgh's about. Pittsburgh and its heritage of blue-collar steel workers, that's really what football's about, right?
We've always had a good team back in the 70s, you know, with John Starworth, Benny Cunningham, Franco, and it's always been good. So now, you know, we're there again.
Then I go to Europe and I tell them I'm from Pittsburgh. 99 out of 100 would say, hey, Steelers. They know the Steelers everywhere.
They're a team that gets down to the nitty-gritty, that's the word. So, yeah, we love the Steelers.
It's a big tailgating, everything involved with it. It's just our culture here, the Pittsburgh culture, you know? It's great.
It is great. And you know, what we get to do here at WQED can be pretty great too. And we're happy to share these extras so they're not just sitting on a shelf somewhere or lingering on a DVD. We're always looking for new surprises and new stories, but sometimes it's good to look back at these pieces of programs that nobody ever looks at. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot more where these came from. Let's do it again, soon.
It's Pittsburgh and a lot of other stuff is made possible by the BUHL Foundation, serving southwestern Pennsylvania since 1927. And by PNC, celebrating Pittsburgh's past, present, and future at the PNC Legacy Project exhibit in downtown Pittsburgh.